Hi, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and this is Thursday, August 23rd. We had another great downtrend today. Um, it got a little interesting right in here, but this is just a correction back. If you had this trend line drawn right here, you should have been ready for these two trades, and these were two of the better trades of the afternoon, really of the day. They were choppy, and at least this one was. It was a little slow in working out, but prices continued to move lower. And then this one moved a little faster, but just a second leg, and you can see that. Let me just show you right here. It's two measured legs. There's leg one, and then there's leg two, and you can see that there's two great measured legs right there. We finally got a break of the trend line here, and we're working lower. We never were able to make a new low by the end of the day. But also at the beginning of the day, we really had this trend line right here, and I call this a minor trend line. Then we had a break, and then a couple of legs down to a new low, and then we had the correction. But really all this was the lower end of the trading range, in my opinion. You can see that right there if you come up here off of the lows of the overnight and draw that down through there. And all I did was clone this line, and I drew it through those first two swings where you touch the first two bars. And you can see that worked perfectly for here and here. And these were, like I said, these were the two for sure trades right here. But let's go back and talk about them. This is a second entry short after a pullback. Let me get this out of the way. You got this pullback right here. You got a little double top with a one tick trap right off the EMA. That's a great entry. Easy scalp. Any runners would have even been safe on this one, so you could have ridden this one down for several points. Same thing right here. This is just a repeat pattern of that right there. You can see that the patterns look almost the same. You know, you got the pullback, then you try to go lower, and then one more shoot up, and you touch the EMA with a little tick higher, and that's another great short. And there were a few overlapping bars here, but this is a strong downtrend. And you know, you generally a two-legged pullback to the EMA is almost always, if it sets up below the EMA, it's usually a good trade. You see this one here. This one didn't set up nearly as well. Notice we got above the EMA, and then the closes are above the EMA. So that's not a good setup. You got to be really careful with that one. And then we went higher. You could have gone short here, but again, it's not a really, I mean, you could have said, hey, this is a breakout above this high, and it would have almost worked, but you got to figure that we're probably coming back up here to test this high, and we're probably on our way to right here, and you see we're only about halfway there at this point. So it's a little bit without a double top or something, and you did kind of get a double top right here, but notice that by that time you got all these overlapping bars, and this has still got a green body. It's just not really a good setup. Everything's above the EMA, so it's not really a good setup. You need something better. You need a double top or something, and then you finally get that here, and notice where this stalled at, where we came to. This was where the runners got free right here. This was your entry off this trade, and notice we didn't quite get the runners on that, and so there's just hardly any freebies in this market. And that's what this was. This was a pullback. It's really a correction back to the. This is a trend channel. It's just a larger trend channel, and you can see. But notice how once we got those break-even runners, we couldn't get any higher. That was pretty much it until right here, and then they trapped everybody. And so while this was a little bit of an iffy short too, I really didn't like this one, but I talked myself into taking it, and I felt like it was probably worth marking since it did work out pretty well. But you've got all this overlap, but we got a double top here with this little break higher that's a trap, and so that's two tests of this area right here, and it's at a high. And you got to figure we're probably coming back down here to test this low, and there's enough room to do that now. So I ended up taking this trade. Like I said, I tried to talk myself out of it, and I said, no, it's a good setup, and it worked out okay. It wasn't an easy trade because we had, we got caught in here and we pulled back, but it worked out, and we came all the way down and tested this low again. Then you got another two-legged correction, and this is coming. This was the better place to wait and enter, because now you get a touch of the trend line. And you can see this is, again, we got a broader double top. We got that one tick higher that trapped everybody, and then prices turned down. And so going short right there or right there was okay. It was better to get short up here higher, because as you get lower down here, then you don't have a lot of room before these next lows. But and it took this trade a little bit of time to work through right here. And this is really kind of a trading range right across here. So you can't get short too close to the lows here. You got to wait for a breakout pullback short, which we finally got right here. And I know that this didn't actually go lower, but really your lows were right across, really right across there, and maybe even right there is what I would call that. And you see we did break lower than that. We pulled back, but that's a double top. We tested the EMA twice right there. And so then you got to figure we're probably going to at least get another leg like this. And so there's a breakout pullback short right there as well, if you saw that. And I liked that entry. I actually took that entry there myself. And then prices bounced, came back. What they do, they come back and they take the breakout. The breakout stops. So if you didn't exit down here when it started bouncing, it came back and got your runners. Then you got another chance to enter right here, and this was a nice move right here. You got a really nice move down, and again, your runners would have been safe here. But look what happens. You know, even though prices ran right way on down here, eventually they come back, and where do they go? They go just high enough to take out the break-even stops again. And you'll see that a lot. I don't talk about that a lot because usually, you know, they come back and get them right away. But this just shows you how efficient the market is. And they know where those stops are, and they're always coming back and taking them out because they know a lot of traders entered right there below that bar, and they've probably tightened their stops up right there, and they come back and take them out. Then we had another double top. This was the first break of the major trend line. I call this a mine. And one thing about this trend line, this is a nice strong trend, but that is just too steep. When you get one that steep, you know it's not going to last very long. And really, there's your first two swings of the overnight, and that turned out to be the perfect trend line. And you can see even how we bounced off the upper side of it once we got above it. But we're trying to push down here and make that new low. And again, after this leg down and then this correction, that should have been your target. And if you drag that over there, your target was right in here, so you should have exited right in here, and that would have got you that full move almost. And then you got to move back up. And you could have gone short right here, but that was a little bit risky because that move looks pretty strong right there. And you just don't know if we're not coming up here to test. I was really expecting that we'd come up here and test this high and then turn down. And I really thought there's a chance we might even come up here and test this one. But when we got this double top here with that one tick higher, that's a nice trap. And so that's a good place to enter. And at first I was looking to enter here. But then when the next bar made a little bit lower high, I moved it up here. And again, this is kind of a second entry short here. It's difficult to see on this chart, but here's your move up. You made a new high, you pulled back, and then you made another run up and tested that and made a little double top there. And this is a higher low right here. So if you went to a smaller chart, you would see two legs right there, with this being a failed leg higher. And so this is really a second entry short, and no matter how you look at it, it's allowing you to get short way up here into these highs in a strong sell-off day. Now, if this was a range day, I would probably say, hey, that wasn't a very good trade. But now we're, this is a retest of the breakout of the range, which is probably right along those closes right there. And you can see that we came right back. That was the original low, and then we tested again. And you might even call it down here. Either way, it's the same thing. But on a strong trend day like today, you get a double top during the pullback on the first break of your major trend line. You better be taking that trade, and you're able to get in, you're able to keep a real tight stop here just in case it does go higher. So it was really a nice entry. And this right here was actually a good entry as well, because this is a breakout pullback short right here off of those lows right across there. And you can see that we broke lower, we pulled back, and you got to be thinking another leg down. But in that little one tick higher, there's also a little trap, if you can see that. Let me make this a little bigger. And you can see that one tick higher than that little double top right there, and then it turned back down. So this was another breakout pullback short, and even though I didn't mark it, it was a good trade. And let me show you something else too. Even though this, I think this was the channel, you take that same line and you move it over to that low right there, and you can see that's where we were heading back down to test those lows. So you really almost had two channels here, and this is kind of like the center line of those two channels, and hopefully you can see that. So when we got, if you draw that and drag it over here, that was obvious that was a good place to bounce. And you see right here there's still plenty of room left to get down to here or here, depending on where we're going. And I was hoping we were going all the way down to this line, but it just didn't happen, and that's asking for a lot. But you never know. I was looking for another leg similar to this one right here, and you just never know when you're going to get it, because that's usually when you get a big strong leg down or up, and then a correction that lasts this long, then your next leg. And so we may end up getting it in overnight or finishing it up tomorrow. We'll just have to wait and see. But let's just look at this. If you draw, if this was the first leg right here, and we're looking for leg two, and we're looking for prices to come all the way back down in this area right here. So, and we are really out of time. So my guess is we're probably going to bounce. And what you got to remember is that we're at the 1400 area here, and that's what we're testing again. And that's why we had a really strong time getting below it. And if you come back over here previously, you'll find, if we can find it, we had a hard time getting above that level. You can see we're testing it. We're testing it all across here. And there's 1400 right in there. And you can see how hard a time we had getting above it. We got above it a little there on that day. This day we couldn't even really get above it. And overnight we got above it, but we ended up, that's why we're in these ranges across here. Got above it a little bit there, and then we're back below it, and we finally got above it there. Then we come right back again, and you can see 1400s right there. So we're just running both sides, and finally we broke above it, and we moved higher, and then now we're selling off and coming back down here and testing it from the other side. I mean, that's what will happen. You're in those century, when I say century, I'm talking about the 100 points. When we get to 1500, you'll see something similar, or 1300. Those are very psychological areas that affect people. People are watching them. They just seem to be difficult areas to break through and move on. So just keep that in mind too. Don't trade on that, but just keep that in mind when prices are nearing it. And you can see that today, when we got near it, we just couldn't get through it. And the closer we got to it, the more the selling kind of subsided, because there's probably a lot of people looking to get long down in here around 1400. And what happens is a lot of them don't want to miss a trade, so they'll start buying a little bit early. Now I'm not talking about day traders, although day traders may be doing that too. I'm talking about your longer term traders, people that are looking for this thing to go higher to 1450 or 1500. They may buy it a few times down here around 1400, hoping to catch those bounces off that. So my guess is that's why we're really struggling to get lower here, is because this is that psychological century mark on the chart. So anyway, hopefully you saw something similar today. This might have been a little confusing to some people because they're looking at this trend line and then we had the break. But even if that was the case, and you didn't have this upper trend line, which we do have, you can't ignore those first two swings. But even if you take that out of the way, what you have to consider is this rally started about 9:15, 9:20, and it lasted to 10:30 or something. So that's about a little over an hour, and that's what will happen on most trend line breaks. You're going to get at least a correction or a trading range. It's going to last for an hour or so at minimum, and then you'll likely get another move back down again. So even if that was the main trend line and this one wasn't up here, that still met our rules for a correction, and then we'll start trying to make another trend line down. So let me put this back just so you can see that. But when we bounce there this time and this time, when even if you didn't catch this one, you definitely should have caught this one. And you can see there was a lot more confidence in this entry than there was this one, because this is a two-legged pullback after a move down that came off that same line, while we came into the line kind of flat right here, so or actually moving to the upside. And here's you something else to look at. Just mention this before I go. Notice that trend line right there. That's a short-term trend line coming up through there. We broke it, and then guess what happens? Two legs up to a brand new high, one tick higher than that. So that's another reason to like that trade right there. So even your short-term trend lines, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll break it, and they'll come back and they'll test the lower side of the trend line, and you may not make a new high. But in this case, we followed the rules precisely. We had a nice little trend coming up through here. We finally made a double top, broke lower, broke the trend line, and then excuse me, I'm sorry, and then we broke the trend line and two legs up to a new high. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to call it a day right there. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. Hope you had a great trading day, and we'll try to do it again tomorrow to wrap the week up, and I'll see you then.